Yes. So, after discussing these three aspects of Hamlet, now we are moving on to further aspects which are considered important in understanding Hamlet. And one such aspect is use of supernatural in Hamlet. Roughly, it means that William Shakespeare's play Hamlet is full of supernatural events, and these events have a bearing on the play. Shakespeare knowingly uses certain incidents and certain characters which are beyond the pale of humanity, which bring supernatural elements within the play. In the very beginning of the play, we see that supernatural in Hamlet appears in the form of the ghost. And we discussed how this ghost is seen by two guards, Merciless and Bernardo, and these two guards inform first Horatio, and then Horatio informs Hamlet that a ghost of his father has been seen. Before Horatio comes, the guard who is there before the castle, he is afraid of ghosts, and Horatio is informed about this supernatural incident. Horatio comes to verify the report of the appearance of the ghost, whether the ghost is really there or it's just a figment of imagination of the guards, just a fancy in the mind of terrified guards in the night. So when Horatio comes in the company of Marcellus, the latter tells Bernardo that Horatio is not inclined to believe that they have seen the ghost. Now, Horatio is a skeptic. Horatio is a scholar as well as a skeptic person. Skeptic is a person who doubts on things, and Horatio is a rationalist, Tarkic head. It means he is not going to easily believe that there are ghosts and spirits in the world. And they talk about Horatio and his doubt over the nature of ghosts they have seen. And they say that Horatio says it is but our fantasy. They say that Horatio believes that the ghost is not real. They have not seen the ghost, it's simply our fantasy, our imagination, and will not let belief take hold of him, touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. And Horatio does not believe us. Although we have seen this ghost two times in the night, therefore I have entreated him alone with us to host the minutes of this night, that if again this apparition come, he may approve our eyes and speak of it. So he says we have invited Horatio to come so that he could see the ghost with his own eyes and believe what we are telling him that a ghost is frequenting the castle. Now, there is an atmosphere of tension and fear before the appearance of the ghost. It's night time, and even the talk of ghost arouses emotions of fear and terror in the heart of guards. The atmosphere of supernatural has effectively been created, and the sensation of astonishment and terror effectively aroused in the readers. So we can visualize, it's night time and it's lonely there, and they are expecting a ghost to appear before them, and then the ghost appears, but it looks offended. It does not relish, it does not answer anything when when the guards try to speak to him. So the sense of mystery is deepened when ghost looks offended by Horatio's speaking to him, and then stalks away, and then he moves away. The ghost does not answer when Horatio asks him who he is and what is his purpose in coming there. He just goes away, and Horatio looks pale and trembles. It is natural. It seems natural that Horatio should be terrified because he never believed in ghosts on the one hand, and secondly, the whole appearance of the ghost seems to be uncanny and strange to him. Yes, so he feels in awe, he trembles, and he becomes pale, and we also feel the same effects on our imagination. Then Horatio, when he sees ghosts, he comments that the ghost seems to be the ghost of Hamlet's father, Hamlet Jr.'s father, the late king, and he also appeared in the very armor in which he fought against Norwegian king. Horatio says he does not know what to think of the ghost, but in his opinion, this ghost bears some strange eruption to our state. Horatio feels that the appearance of ghost seems to have a foreboding about the bad things which are going to happen to the state. So the appearance of a ghost is an omen. ओमिन कहते हैं, जो अपशगुन होता है. It seems to be an omen, and so he feels that the ghost represents something unnatural which seems to have taken place in the kingdom of Denmark, and it may also represent the future unnatural events. So the appearance of the ghost is not simply an event. It forebodes something. It means something, either some unnatural event which has happened in the past or something bad is going to happen in the future. So he believes that the appearance of the ghost indicates that some evil is brewing in the state of Denmark and that some danger threatens the country. And then he refers to the same supernatural events which happened in Rome when Julius Caesar was assassinated, was killed by Brutus and his friends. So he says the day before Julius Caesar was killed in Rome, there were so many unnatural incidents which happened in Rome. There were telltale signs of something evil to be happening in the city of Rome. And he says, in the most high and palmy state of Rome, a little the mightiest Julius fell. The graves stood tenantless, and the sheeted dead did squeak and gibber in the Roman streets. So he says, the night before Julius Caesar was killed, the dead people came out of their graves, and the sheeted dead, and the dead people who were wrapped in their sheets, they squeak and gibber. They talked in confusing voices in Roman streets. So it means to say that the events of the earlier night before Julius Caesar was killed, it foreboded that some bad thing is going to happen, some great man is going to fall, or some calamity is going to befall the Roman kingdom. So again the ghost appears. Horatio decides to talk again, but in vain. The ghost does not say anything to him, and he disappears at the voice of the cock. Because the voice of cock symbolizes the approaching morning. So it means the ghosts and evil spirits are not supposed to wander in the day. They are creatures of night. And Horatio tells that the ghost appeared to look like a guilty thing, and hearing the cock crow, the spirits have to go back to hell from where they have come. So this is a very usual belief that ghosts and evil spirits wander only in the night, and as the morning approaches, they disappear. So the whole opening scene talks about an uncanny event. It reeks of fear, mystery, suspense, and it has a terrifying effect on the audience and readers. Critics are very, praiseful of this opening scene, wherein Shakespeare uses supernatural mystery and fear to arouse curiosity in the readers. And Shakespeare, you know, also introduces through the warlike appearance of the late king the battle, the war which has taken place between Norway and Denmark during the reign of King Hamlet Senior. Then we are informed that Hamlet comes to meet the ghost when Horatio tells him about the appearance of his father, and Hamlet makes up his mind to visit the spot at midnight to see if the ghost will talk with him or not. Hamlet too believes that the appearance of the ghost means some evil. He says, my father's spit in arms, all is not well. I doubt some foul play. So Hamlet feels that if his father has appeared in the form of a ghost, and that too in full armor, wearing a battle dress, it means something bad has happened, and he suspects that some evil might be lurking behind the appearance of the ghost. So as it turns out, Hamlet's suspicion proves to be well founded, correct. The ghost is seen by Hamlet, and the ghost talks to him. Hamlet is not frightened of the ghost. When his friends try to stop him from going after the ghost, Hamlet talks in a very strict manner, and he tells them to leave him. And then he talks with Ghost. The Ghost discloses to Hamlet that he is really his father, and that he has become a ghost because he has not died naturally. He tells him how Claudius, his own brother, who is now the king of Denmark, has murdered him and become king. And the way how he murdered him was that he was sleeping in the garden. Claudius came from behind, poured poison into his ears, and killed him. And he brought out the rumor that the king died because of a snake bite. And the ghost speaks in very harsh terms about his murderer, whom he says that he has not only taken the kingdom of Denmark, but also has won the Queen Gertrude as his wife. And he lays a duty upon Hamlet that now it is his duty to avenge his death, and he must not allow the royal bed of Denmark to be a coach for luxury and damned incest. So Ghost lays a sacred duty upon Hamlet that he is to remove evil from the kingdom of Denmark. He is to kill the king and get rid of Denmark from his evil influence. Now we see that this supernatural event, this appearance of ghost, is very important to the play because it introduces in a way the basic plot over which the whole play revolves. We are introduced with Hamlet, we are given the background story, we are also told about how the king was killed, and so the later events will be based upon what has been revealed through the ghost. Now, there are certain questions. Some people say, and they discuss whether the ghost is real or simply a part of Hamlet's imagination. Does the ghost has an objective reality, or is simply a subjective imagination of Hamlet and Hamlet particularly? But at this time, it seems that the ghost has an objective reality. It seems to be real because the ghost is seen not only by Hamlet but by Horatio and guards also. So it's true that the ghost does not speak to anyone else except Hamlet, but at this point, we cannot say that the ghost is a subjective product of Hamlet's mind because, first thing, there are many witnesses. Second thing, there was a usual convention during Shakespeare's time that the ghosts were seen to be real. They were not simply taken as psychological product of somebody's mind, but rather they were supposed to have an objective reality. So if we put this play within the beliefs of that time, we can understand that ghost seems to have a reality, an objective reality. And then the ghost is also used in certain other manners. So when Hamlet goes back to his friends and tells them that his father is that he has talked with the ghost of his father, and he tells them that they should take an oath of secrecy, that they will not tell about his meeting with ghost to anybody. So he tells his friends that they should take an oath, and whenever he tells them to take an oath, the ghost speaks from behind. Swear. He tells his friends that they should take an oath that they will not tell anybody, and the ghost says swear. So it's heard by the companions. Horatio feels surprised when he hears the ghost speaking the word swear, कसम खाओ, धमकाता है उनको. जो हेमलेट के साथ नहीं उनको कहता है, जब हेमलेट कहते हैं ना तुम्हें कसम खानी है, तुम्हें बात किसी को नहीं बताओगे कि मैं घोस्ट से मिला हूं, तो पीछे से घोस्ट की टेरिफाइंग आवाज आती है, कसम खाओ. So he's surprised. Oh, day and night, but this is wondrous and strange. This is spoken by Horatio when he hears the voice of ghost. The effect of ghost is that Hamlet decides to take an antic disposition. He decides to behave like a madman so that the king does not become suspicious of his intentions to kill him. There is second appearance of ghost also. The ghost again appears when Hamlet is talking with his mother Gertrude in her chamber. But at this time, ghost is only visible to Hamlet, not to Gertrude. Right? And he again tells Hamlet that he has not taken revenge. He reminds him that so much time has passed and still he has not been able to kill Claudius. And Hamlet reproaches himself for this delay before the ghost. Gertrude is not able to see the ghost and she thinks that Hamlet has gone mad. That's why he seems to be talking to air. So here we see that the ghost has another reality. In this presentation, ghost may be called as having a subjective reality and not an objective reality because the ghost is here not visible to Gertrude. Now he is only visible to Hamlet. Only he is able to attest that he is seeing the ghost of his father. So the second appearance of ghost is to spur Hamlet for taking revenge. Secondly, he appears at a very critical moment when Hamlet is very angry with his mother. And the ghost reminds Hamlet that he is not supposed to kill his mother. He is only supposed to take the revenge, but not to kill his mother. So these two purposes are fulfilled by the ghost during this scene. That he reminds Hamlet about his delaying of the revenge, and secondly, he exhorts him not to kill his mother. And third thing, which is very important, is that here the ghost is only visible to Hamlet and not to his mother. While in the first scene we saw how the ghost was visible to uh, three people at least, except other than Hamlet, two guards in Horatio. So Bradley, who was a very famous critic of Shakespeare, he says that the appearance of ghost in the closet scene is not real but a product of Hamlet's fancy. Bradley thinks that ghost here is simply a product of Hamlet's imagination. Is not real. Yes. So we certain people are of the opinion that maybe Bradley may be right, but there is another group of critics who say that ghost is not an hallucination of Hamlet because the ghosts were supposed to have some power to make themselves visible to whosoever they like. So if we believe in ghost and believe in his objective reality in the first scene, there are no strong arguments to believe that here the ghost is simply a subjective product of Hamlet's imagination. So we can very easily excuse the reason that Hamlet is not visible to Gertrude because the evil spirits or the spirits in general, they used to have power to make themselves visible or invisible to any person they like or don't like. Yes. So this is particularly the role which ghost plays in Hamlet, and the appearance of the ghost is supernatural. So he plays a very essential role in the plot. It is only through his revelation that Hamlet learns the real facets of the late king's death. He comes to know how his father died, and it is also the ghost which urges Hamlet to take revenge. And again, in the closet scene, he asks him to take revenge. He reminds him to take revenge again because it seems that Hamlet is delaying the action knowingly. So he reveals the characters and he derives a certain moral. The ghost is seen by Horatio and others other than Hamlet, and we must remember that it is only Hamlet to which the ghost speaks, not to anybody else. Again, when it appears before Hamlet, when he is with his mother, the queen is unconscious of his presence and cannot even hear his voice. So the ghost seems to be speaking only to Hamlet, not to anybody else. This is very important. So it shows that there is close and intimate relationship between father and son. Why the ghost speaks only to Hamlet and not to other people? In a way, ghost is a voice of Hamlet's own unconscious psyche. The ghost speaks only to Hamlet. It means it shows that Hamlet Senior and Hamlet the Prince had a very close relationship, and it is only the Hamlet the Prince who is admitted to the secrets of Hamlet Senior. It illustrates, secondly, that there is no such close affinity between Hamlet and his mother. That's why the ghost does not speak to her. It also has a moral ring in the sense that the queen has so much gone away from the moral sphere that she is not able to receive the spiritual vision which only Hamlet receives, because he still maintains, a kind of morality about his actions, and he is the moral center of the play in this sense. So we see some patterns in the use of supernatural in Hamlet. First pattern is supernatural events are limited to the appearance of the ghost and talk about unnatural happenings which follow an evil action or an evil king. The ghost is a very important role in the play because he introduces the murder of the king and he tells Hamlet to take revenge. So he is propeller of the action in the play. And William Shakespeare uses supernatural events within his plays to create suspense, to arouse curiosity of the audience, as well as to give a push to the narrative. And supernaturalism is a major part of William Shakespeare's dramatic art, and he uses supernatural elements in most of his plays. This is how we can sum up the discussion, right? Okay. The next important aspect of the play is the character of Hamlet. We understand that Hamlet is the center of the play, and certain critics opine that the play Hamlet is a kind of character study of its hero. It's more concentrated on various facets of the hero than on the plot. Plot is not important here. Even the revenge theme is not important here. What seems to be more important to William Shakespeare is analysis of the character of Hamlet. We find that there are certain salient qualities of Hamlet which William Shakespeare introduces into the hero. First important aspect of Hamlet's character is his philosophical nature and intellectual depth. We see how Hamlet is a philosophical person. He analyzes the problems of life through a philosophical analysis of these problems, and he's a scholar. We come to know that he has been studying in the University of Wittenberg, and he is deeply interested in the motives, the causes of the actions, and not in the real action. So he has got a philosophical nature and he has got an intellectual depth in him. It is visible in his soliloquies. His soliloquies show him to be a man of deeply reflective and meditative nature. He thinks. He reflects over whatever puzzles him. In the very first soliloquy, we find him meditating upon the indecent haste with which his wicked mother has remarried. So he talks about how his mother did not wait for a sufficient time, and just after the death of his father, she married again to his uncle. He feels that even a beast would have waited for a longer time, and he deplores the fact that his mother is married to a person who is no match to his dead father, and that's why he generalizes frailty. The name is woman. Similarly, in the second soliloquy, he meditates upon the revelation which the ghost has made, and he calls his mother most pernicious woman, most evil woman, while Claudius becomes for him a villain, smiling, damned villain. Smiling, damned villain, yes. There is some disturbance here. Okay. So, when we analyze the soliloquies of Hamlet, we find that Hamlet's true nature is revealed most visibly in his soliloquies. So, we find that He is philosophical and meditative man and perhaps incapable of action, which the ghost demands from him. We also see him as a sensitive and idealistic young man. Hmm? He is involved in a general guilt, means he knows that the ghost has given him a duty, and his duty is to make the world a better place. But at the same time, he knows that he is incapable of doing this duty because he feels himself weak and insufficient for the cause. Hamlet is also well known for the use of puns and other forms of wordplay. He frequently takes help of irony, satire, and puns. Puns means a word having more than one meaning. So, in his conversation with Claudius, Gertrude, and Ophelia, Hamlet frequently makes use of wordplay. Means he gives two meanings to his sentences, to his words. When the king Claudius says that you are my son, he says, I'm too much in the sun. So, son, S-O-N and S-U-N, they have divergent meanings. So, he plays upon words to say that he does not like his too affectionate nature. And yes, when his mother says that uh, death is a common thing and people die and one should not sorrow too much, Hamlet counters by saying, ah, madam, it's common. So, in each of the double meanings which Hamlet gives to his sentences and his words, it pierces the hearts of people. So, why he uses irony and why he uses style and does not use direct statement? It is because Hamlet is very sensitive and he knows, he feels, he knows that what people are saying is quite different from what they really mean. He knows it. So he knows the difference between the appearance and the reality. That Claudius is only trying to be solicitous to him while actually he is a villain. He knows that his mother has erred in marrying his uncle. That's why, to bring out his grief and to bring out the pain which he feels in his heart at the betrayal of his mother and Claudius, he has to take recourse to the use of irony and style. Then, of course, we come to the introspective nature of Hamlet. He thinks too much. He is a victim of circumstances in the sense that his father has been murdered behind him, and he finds himself unable to take action. Under ordinary circumstances, he is not ineffectual, but the circumstances which he faces there are abnormal, and Hamlet finds himself unable to take action. He has good friends like Horatio, with whom he talks and with whom he shares everything. He takes antic disposition so as to take revenge upon his father's murder. He is a man of many talents, as Ophelia tells us that he is a scholar, soldier. He was considered the apex of humanity. He was an ideal young prince who was loved by everyone. He is not a simple man. He is a man of extraordinary complexity in the sense that he knows both. He reflects our multifaceted aspects of things. He does not take things as they seem to him. Rather, he knows that there are more than one side of things, and he analyzes multiple aspects of things. There is a guilty feeling in his heart. Of course, we can talk about the Oedipus complex within him, and yes, he takes action sometimes. He is able to act, but he is able to act only at the spur of the moment. Whenever he starts thinking, whenever he starts meditating, he is not able to take action. He has an aversion towards evil, and towards the last, we see that how there is a growth in Hamlet. When he meets the grave diggers and comes to realize that death is all, he comes to understand that life doesn't mean anything. That it's the fate, something beyond us which controls us. And this fate makes him realize that he's simply a puppet. Ripeness is old, or maturity is old. This is the usual dictum which Shakespearean heroes follow. That ultimate purpose of life is maturity, understanding that man is too small a thing to matter. It's the cosmic will, it's the God which controls us, and we are helpless before the events. So he comes to understand his own significance and meets his death, kills the enemy, kills the villain, and is able to realize that human beings are simply playthings in the hands of God. So this is a kind of fulfillment towards the end of the play. Right? So you can sum up William Shakespeare's major character Hamlet in this play by saying that he is quite a complex character, and Shakespeare has devoted much energy in analyzing and giving Hamlet a complexity which is usually not found in other dramatic characters. Right? This is how we attempt it. Okay.